Welcome to Storytime with Snaggy Wolf, where the moonlight meets microphone and every tale glows with a spark of magic. I'm your host, Snaggy Wolf, headphones on, mic hot, and ready to guide you through stories that stir the soul, tickle the imagination, and sometimes howl at the moon. So take a seat on the log by the fire, let the fireflies dance, and settle in for a journey through legends, mysteries, and midnight musings. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the pack, because every story is better when it's shared. The Loving Wife. The old farmhouse sat on a small hill in the middle of nowhere. At the bottom of the lane sat a black sedan, engine off. Its occupant, Jackson Lambert, sat inside smoking one last cigarette before he began. He had never taken a job so far away from the city before. He was over 3.5 hours downstate. The closest town, if it could even be called that, was West Knob. Population 600, according to the green city limit sign. It was now fully dark, and the moon in a pale orange flame had began its ascent above the eastern horizon. It was time. Jackson stamped out his cigarette in the ashtray, slipped on a pair of blue nitrile gloves, and grabbed a Glock pistol stashed away beneath his seat. Jackson first met his client 1 month prior to Talbot's Bar and Grill in Chicago. Jackson Lambert was the sort of person you had to contact through a friend of a friend of a friend, and that's just what Dorothy Naughton had done. In the meeting, she used Lambert's favorite four-word cliché: money is no object. That was the initial meeting, to get a feel for the client, and to make sure everything was on the up and up. The next day, they met at Dante's Motel in Aurora. Dorothy came well prepared. She brought along with her half of the agreed upon fee. It was the usual agreement. Half the sum was paid up front, and Jackson would get the rest once the job was done. Besides the cold hard cash, she also provided photographs of her husband, as well as their house. She had well-made directions from Chicago to the farmhouse where she and her husband lived. Detailed information about the layout of the house, where her husband could be found inside, and a specific time the hit should go down. She seemed almost experienced at this business herself. Hell, she even had an alibi that would keep her far away when everything went down. On the night in question, she'd be visiting her mom, who lived in the Chicago area. Jackson was to make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. He assured Miss Naughton that it would be no problem whatsoever. Before parting ways, Dorothy Naughton said to him, "I really do love my husband, you know, but he's very sick, and this will be best for him." "Whatever you need to say so he can sleep at night, lady," Jackson thought to himself. All of his clients had some kind of excuse to appease their consciences. He didn't really understand why. He wasn't there to coddle them or to make them feel good about themselves. He was a professional with a job to do. Whatever reason his client had to employ his skills, it wasn't his concern in the least. Jackson started making his way up the lane. As a lifelong city boy, he was amazed by the total isolation of the place. The nearest neighboring house was well over 2 miles down the road, and the entire time he had been sitting in the bottom of the lane, not a single car passed by on the desolate country road. After reaching the house, Jackson let himself in the front door. It was unlocked, just as Dorothy Naughton had said it would be. Jackson had no problem navigating the house, even in the dark. Miss Naughton's description of her home was so detailed that Jackson felt he knew it as his own. For a person who claimed that money was no object, he found it odd the house was so sparsely furnished, but her money was real. There was no doubt about that. Mr. Naughton was supposed to be upstairs in the bedroom. Jackson came to the stairwell, and with careful, deliberate steps, he moved up the naked wooden stairs as quiet as a cat. As he ascended the stairs, the air grew heavier, and a musky stench, something like a cross between a men's locker room and a dog kennel, assaulted his nostrils. When Jackson reached the top of the narrow staircase, he could hear the stertorous breath of Mr. Naughton coming from the bedroom to the right. He stepped into the bedroom, cool and casual. The room itself was well lit, but by no other source than this ethereal light of the full moon flooding into the room from the curtainless windows. There in the bed was Mr. Naughton, laying stark naked above the covers. Mr. Naughton paid Jackson Lambert no heed whatsoever. The assassin might just as well have been invisible. Naughton's body glistened in the moonlight. He convulsed with labored breaths. His eyes rolled madly in their sockets as he looked around the room in a fevered confusion. Jackson looked at him in disgust, but felt no pity for the man. Pity was a poor man's emotions. "Hello, Mr. Naughton," Jackson said, still unnoticed by the man writhing in his bed. "I've brought a gift from your wife." Then he raised his pistol and fired 2 shots into Naughton's head and 1 into his chest. Mr. Naughton slumped over motionless. Thick crimson blood saturated the pillow and the sheets beneath him. When he fired 3 more shots into the wall behind the bed to create the illusion of someone discharging the weapon haphazardly. And just like that, the job was done. Easy money. Or so Jackson thought. As he turned to leave, something impossible happened. Mr. Naughton started screaming. He screamed at the top of his voice. Jackson reeled around, his pistol still gripped firmly in his hand, but couldn't believe his eyes. Naughton, convulsing and frothing at the mouth, rolled out of the bed, landing on the hardwood floor with a heavy thud. The man supported himself on his hands and knees, but he still screamed and howled. All the blood in Jackson's face escaped to an unknown hiding place, leaving him white as a sheet. His eyes trembled in their sockets as he watched, dumbstruck, as Mr. Naughton's flesh split like a sausage casing from the nape of his neck down to just above his buttocks. In mad panic, Jackson emptied his pistol. Every bullet hit its mark, but Mr. Naughton didn't fall. His skin continued to split, revealing dark hair matted with blood beneath his torn flesh. Jackson saw enough of the perverse transformation. He bolted through the door, making his way to the stairs, but before he realized what was happening, he was tumbling down them. At the bottom step, he heard the loud snap and felt fire explode in his leg. Beneath his pant leg protruded jagged bone through flesh. He broke out in a cold sweat, and the room started to spin like a carnival ride. He heard a low, guttural growl and looked up the stairs. The huge creature, once Mr. Naughton, walked on all 4s. Thick, vicious drool dripped from its powerful jaws. He watched in disbelief as it began to descend the stairs. Even in his state of shock, he could hear the creature's long claws clanking on the bare wooden stairs. Halfway down, it lunged. Nobody would hear Jackson Lambert's screams as he was torn apart and consumed by the beast. Nobody would miss a man that could be only contacted through the friend of a friend of a friend. Dorothy Naughton loved her husband very much, despite his illness keeping her away when the full moon was arise. She still made sure he always had plenty to eat whenever she left to visit her mother. The dancers at the club all knew my name. I felt the dry hum of my car's ancient engine under me as I sulked. My face was warm and ghoulish. I couldn't tell if it was from the heater or the drink flowing through my veins. My back felt like it had been prodded by 1,000 rusty nails. My vision stirred and wobbled worse than a drunken sailor on leave. As the world started to come into focus, I heard the roar of a trillion raindrops gushing down. In the distance of the furious sky grumbled and flashed its lights. A violent wave was washing over me, egging my throbbing head on. I squinted and glanced out the front. A giant neon woman danced in the rain. She only knew the one move, jumping up in the air with a wink and a cheer. She stood tall, her wired frame clinging to the crimson-toned roof of the joint. I shifted in my seat, examining my surroundings. I heard cars in the distance, but the haze of the torrential downfall blocked all but the loudest of trucks. I studied the building in front of me. The neon woman did her simple routine atop the structure. It was 1 story, faded curtains drawn at every window, and made of chipped brick that had seen better days. A bored but stern-looking bouncer stood by the front entrance. his clothes like shadows blending into the misty night. Slivers of playful light crept through the drawn shades, a mix of raw orange and rose red. I could make out curvy silhouettes in the windows, swaying to an unheard beat that made the building hum with lust. I felt a faithful urge to start to swell, those gorgeous forms so enticing. The bouncer stood below an awning, the purple and outstretched like a red carpet. In gold lettering, I could barely make out the name of the place. Bombshell Sally's. It was written in crude cursive and ended in a cheeky wink with a heart. It was crude and run down, though in my sordid past I could have easily called a place like this home. There was a club down near the south end I used to frequent before her. Before Affy. My heart moaned at just the flickering thought of her name. Her petite frame popped into my mind. She had curly, strawberry blonde locks like she had danced out of an Irish folk song. She always had a warm smile, an even warmer touch. I'm an artist by trade. I had gone through several models by the time we crossed paths. She was by far the most magnificent. She woke feelings in me I never knew I had. We fell madly in love, and I spent every waking moment with my darling. We had our rows, of course, but what couple didn't? She had her frivolities that I tolerated, but all roads led back to me being her adoring paramour. Our parting had not been amicable. I had gone on a bit of a bender. Bits of pieces of my rampage remained in my head, yet I couldn't form a picture to save my life. The sobering reality of it all began to crawl into me. I realized I had to hurry if I were to drown it. I wobbled out of the car, the night air brisk. The harsh downpour did nothing to help my drunken state. I scurried across the lot towards Sally's. The bouncer regarded me with bored disdain, his eyes hidden by blackout shades. He wore a burly leather jacket that smelled vaguely of cigars and coke. His head was clean-shaven, his lips formed a permanent grimace. When I approached the bouncer, he held out his hand. I forced a smile and straightened myself. "Good evening, sir," I remarked carefully to not slur too much. "I would like to enter this establishment, if you so please." "ID," he gruffly spoke, his expression unchanged. I fumbled around in my pockets, finally fishing out my wallet. I flashed a cheap plastic at him, and he stepped aside. I waltzed right in like I owned the place. A grim lighting behind me as I entered. I felt something slightly brush past my shoulders, a lingering sensation of warmth and familiarity. I swear I heard a sultry voice whisper into my ear. It said, "Welcome home, Blake." I turned around to face the voice, that distant accent that greeted me for so long. But I was met with nothing but now a sealed front door. The inside of the club was laid with filth-stained carpet that looked like it was stapled to the ground. Faded brown yellow spots were sprinkled around like cheetah print rug. The main stage looked like it was made out of cardboard and hastily sprayed black paint. A single pole stood lazily in the center. Surrounding the stage was the bare manned by one of the most beautiful creatures I had ever seen. She stood tall despite her small stature. She was polishing a mug with a dirty rag that was coated in a variety of vibrant colors. She wore a tight-fitting black tee with a graphic of melting butterfly on it. She wore loud, very form-fitting purple jeans. Her fingernails were painted Prince purple and neatly curated, her skin a light olive tone. Her hair was voluminous, a perfect shade of raven black. Her face could make Aphrodite herself blush, and those kind hazel eyes were almost enough to make a man forget himself. Yet, Aphie persisted in my mind. Since I met her, she had been the only one for me, my perfect muse. I glanced around the room. Other patrons were slim to none. Those I did see seemed content in their midnight drink. I approached the bar and slid onto a wobbly stool. The raven-haired beauty regarded me with a cheerful smile, but said nothing. There was other women working the place, strippers, I assume, based on their lack of attire. Each one had a scowl as they passed me by, some fake pleasantries and a mumbled and quick, "Hi, Blake," or "Great to see you, Blake," as they went about their dirty deeds, intending to the other patrons. I wasn't sure how they all knew my name, but I was too distracted by my sorrow to care. The air around us smelled like cheap beer and even cheaper women. The lighting dull, yet vigorous in its fiery colors. From above, unseen speakers thumbed and hummed some melancholy rock. I composed myself and tried to order a drink when a full glass snapped into view, the bartender leaving me with a flirty wink. As I choked the foul-tasting scotch down my throat, a DJ boomed overhead. "Hey, hey, hey, give a big Sally's welcome to our next lady-o the evening. Give it up for Candy." The ghostly voice roared, hyping up the dancer. From the back, a half-baked "woo" rang out. At the end of the walkway, a curtain unfurled. A skinny, tired-looking blonde strolled out. She wore a blue bikini and a bored look on her caked-up face. She went up to the pole as a rock droned over the overheads, and she did a half-assed routine. I recoiled away and tried to hide my disgust. She reminded me of the girls before my muse, doe-eyed and thinking they were the next big thing. Many of them were working girls. I would pluck them out of the hole they'd danced around in, a futile attempt to make something of them, I suppose. Some of them were well-behaved, others quite an annoyance. I would have scolded them like they were pouty children, telling them to sit there quietly and smile while I worked. Tiring creatures. The aspiring model. My muse was different. She could brighten a room just by blinking, and was a modest girl, innocent even, not like the thing that wobbled on two legs before me. Avi had been a dancer, or at least she wanted to. I caught one of her performances. It was very nice, I suppose. Began to take up too much of my time, all the practicing and whatnot. I urged her away from it. She was losing herself in her silly hobby. Eventually, she let go of her pipe dreams, and I reassured her I still loved her all the same. Watching Candy attempt a routine was just cringe. Poor thing looked strung out and was ghastly pale. As I watched her pathetic excuse for a dance, I found myself wondering, had I seen her somewhere before? There was a familiar with her apathetic look on her. When I studied her rather scrawny neck, I caught my gaze moving down towards her pale, flat stomach. I couldn't tell you why that caught my attention, and I'm embarrassed at the rush of sensations that flooded my mind as I did. They were warm and cozy like home. You never forget your first. Of course it wasn't her. She was long gone now. But ogling her swaying form, the thought of sliding a dull finger across her smooth belly recalled such a delightful memory. The world around me snapped back into focus as the gorgeous bartender stepped between me and the stage. She had a bottle of scotch in one hand and an empty glass in the other. "Fill your tank?" she offered. She anticipated my response and plopped the gas down and filled it up. A musty scent of aged vinegar lingered in the air as she poured. She pushed the glass of booze towards me and I drank it up. It burned going down my gullet, and I felt my insides twist and struggle against the poison tide. I winced as I slammed the empty glass down. It rattled at the shoddy bar as it did. The lights around me were bright and throttling my aching vision. I squinted as the bartender leaned in, resting her pretty little head on her hands. "You look like you just dragged out of the harbor," she said in an exaggerated Southie accent. "Why the long face, stranger?" she asked. I avoided her gaze. Those hazel orbs bore down on me. She was everything. I just had to. I shook my head as I mumbled, "It doesn't matter. Just keep 'em coming." I tapped the glass, and the tender obliged. As the world began to sway and tilt, I felt a chill tickle the nape of my neck, like I was being observed on all sides. The scotch continued to fight me all the way down, but I drank whatever the tender served. She kept pouring, that devilish sneer on her face. I leaned on the counter, balancing on the wobbly stool. I felt clawed and calloused hands gripping my shoulders. Out of the corner of my eyes, I saw that dolled-up creature standing behind me. Her ghastly visage wore up close. I tried to shrug her off, but she tightened her grip, digging her nails into my shoulder. "Care for a dance, lover boy?" she said in a monotone way, and there was a twinge of remembrance that flashed in my mind. It vanished as quick as it came. "No, I'm good," I grunted as I shook her off. "Come on, just one dance to remember me by." She slid an arm around my waist. Felt bony and cold. I winced and tried to wiggle my way out of as the tender laughed at my expense. "Get off of me! I said no!" I roared at the annoying twat. "Oh, come on now, Blake," the tender started. A flash of a frenzied pink darted across her iris. "Just smile and nod. It's the proper way to behave," she cooed. I froze at that phrase, that playful mannerism. My eyes widened as the heat from the overhead lights quickly became unbearable. What did you—" I started to whisper, but the quick whisk of a straight razor sailing across my throat gurgled my thoughts. Candy stepped away from me, her ghostly eyes emanating a piercing glow. She was smiling, soaking in my panicked chortling as my hands clung to my neck. I collapsed to the ground, the world dancing around me as I bled out to the jeers of the club. I didn't recognize the flowing fluid pouring out on the floor at first, but as the void began to overtake me, I recalled the wonderful iron scent. Candy knelt down and turned to me over, ripping my shirt open. As she plunged the rusty blade into my soft underbelly, she never once looked away from my dying visage. She took glee in it, and right before the pain came to a sudden yet stinging end, I remember where I had seen her before. As I said, you never forget your first. I awoke to a startling sound. The club DJ was roaring away. I was sitting back on my wobbly stool, a pain still lingering in my throat and belly. Yet, when I went to examine the damage, there was nothing but slightly raw scar tissue. I looked around me. The club was empty, save myself and the tender, whistling away like she pretended to clean a dirty mug. She caught me staring. She broke into a cheerful squeal. She brought out a big bottle of brandy and shoved it towards me. "Bottoms up. Have a hair of the dog. That bit ya." I could see her teeth, her grin wide and joyous. I swiped the bottle off the counter. It shattered to pieces at my feet. "What is this? Where's—" "She can't have been here," I snapped at her. "That'll have to go on your tab." She ignored my request, grumbling at the wasted brandy. I started to get up, but she grabbed my arm and twisted it. She pulled me back down, and I looked at her with vexation. This wild filly surely thought she was all that. "Next event is only seconds away, Blake. You wouldn't want to miss it," she giggled. Hey, party people," the DJ boomed as if on cue. "Give it up for our next performer, Brandy with an I," he roared as my blood ran colder than the depths of hell. From the stage came the next girl. She was short, built like a Mack truck, dark-skinned and brandishing a kitchen knife. She also had one solid gray eye, her other socket hollowed with rot. She darted across the stage, scanning the empty room until her sights set on me. Her face contoured into a fury few have ever known. I staggered back, recognizing this horrid creature. She leapt off the stage and landed with an audible thud. I looked around the room for anything to defend myself with. The crackling of glass gave way to a slip as I fell back. Brandy leered over me with the knife, a navy blue wig atop her head. Her eyes gave off this hellish glow as she pierced her lips in a barbaric snarl. "Evil motherfucker." She growled at me as she raised the knife and plunged it deep into my chest with a roar. I let out a gasp as the blade pierced my heart, Brandy digging the knife as far as it would go. Salty trails ran down her face as she just kept swearing at me. She dug the knife out and kept on stabbing. She was an amateur with it, flaying at my chest cavity with wild fury. She carved hole after hole into me, and there was no method, only madness. Frankly, the sloppy work offended me more than anything. I would have said as much if the blood wasn't filling my lungs, bubbling out of my mouth in a foamy mess. Finally, she grew tired of poking holes in me and rose the blade above my head. I swear it glistened off the rapid light, a deadly twinkle smirking at me. She drove it down, and I felt the tip burst into my cornea. She slowed her descent, taking pride in slowly digging out the gooey center of my retina. The pain was unbearable. What little vision remained was just a flash of gore and vengeful steel. Out of the corner of my remaining eye, I saw the raven-haired girl staring down at me, a look of smug disdain on her face. Her once hazel eyes now a bright pink, her skin a shade of ashen blue. I could taste sulfur and iron in my mouth, and Brandy had collapsed, breaking down next to me just as I caved into the empty embrace of death. Of course, I woke again, and again, and again. Every time my wounds had healed like nothing had happened. Each time the tender offered me a foul-tasting drink. Eventually I would awake to her forcing it down my throat, a sadistic laugh echoing around me as I choked on the strange brew. The DJ was taunting me. The charade slowly collapsed as the women attacked me with monstrous frenzy. Looking a little worse for wear there, Marcus. How about you give a warm welcome to Ember? She sure has one for you. She smelled like singed flesh and charred remains, and after stabbing me and dousing me, she made sure I did as well. Come on out, Sandy, and cut him with a new move. Sandy was a leggy blonde. She dug her high heels into my skull, making mincemeat of my innards as she danced on my grave. Gut him like the disgusting pig he is, Rachel. A fiery redhead, she had a hot temper. She had been difficult. She liked to box in her spare time. It hadn't saved her, of course. She beat me to death with her bare hands and tore me apart. Each time I awoke, it was like being jolted back into a brink. I was weaker, paler, like a piece of my soul had been torn from me and tossed into the abyss. There were so many, you see. It was slow to recall them at first, but I knew each and every one of them. Dare I say intimately. It was rare they knew me. Maybe a quick glance at the gym or a vague recollection of being eyed across the bar. I would pitch them woo and beg to paint their portrait. More often than that, they took the bait. A lot of them had worked the corners. No one missed them. I would subdue them, take them to a quiet place, and, well, did what I did best. I would use their frail tissue as canvas and paint to my heart's content, sculpt their flesh into something wonderful. Sometimes they would awaken during. That was part of the thrill. I would take my trusty switchblade and press it against their cheek. That was usually enough. Over the years, I experimented and tweaked my craft. The urge, the yearning to admire and explore every crevice of my models haunted my every waking moment. It became a slogging chore, really, scratching that itch. The bottomless pit of my own depravity was starting to shock even myself. So I took some time, traveled the world in the eastern seas. Of course, my time abroad didn't do much to quell my urges, something Kimiko took great pleasure in reminding me as she disemboweled me. My guts spilled into my hands like a pile of steaming spaghetti. I didn't really know these models, and my lack of interest had started to show in my work, so I promised myself I would really get to know my next model. Enter Aoife. Sweet, timid, trusting Aoife. I swept her off her feet. She latched onto my cold black heart. She was so kind, so caring, I lavished her with affection and praise, and she lapped it up like a needy pup. Her neediness was such a godsend. Her adoration filled a hole in my chest I didn't even know I had. And then, of course, it all went to hell when she found my paintings. My many murders at the hands of these scorned specters were starting to wear me down. I awoke once more, sprawled out on the filthy stained floor. A spittle of drool inched out of my mouth, and my head was still swirling from the sensation of being split open with tire iron. My whole body ached and cracked. It had been battered and molded back together so many times now. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the tender smirking at me. My jailer. She leered over me, this ravenous look in her eyes. She was getting sick pleasure out of watching me suffer. I'm sure of it. I wasn't about to let her get the satisfaction of breaking me, so I pulled myself up to face her. She began pouring some foul concoction, but I snatched it out of her hand and broke the bottle against the counter. I brandished my makeshift dagger at her like a raving loon. Her nonchalant demeanor never wavered. "You seem dissatisfied with the service," she remarked. "Cut the shit. What is this? This madness?" I bellowed. "Just a taste of your own medicine, killer." She mocked me. I roared and I swiped the broken bottle at her, hitting nothing but air with the lingering scent of strawberries. I was alone once more. Even the braying DJ was abruptly silent. The air around me was tense and accusing. I began to hear nasty, jealous whispers. They told me I would burn for my crimes. They'd be there to watch me choke on my last breath. Meaningless scorn, really, after all. I had died before. They had burned me, stabbed me, tore me limb from limb. Whatever this place was, despite all the pain and torment, I just got back up again. I laughed at their vicious mockery. The bile was wretched souls spewed. I could escape their endless torment and take my time with the tender. Ah, yes, beauty such as she truly had such sights to show me. The thought of peeling my captor's tan skin from her hide distracted me, and I didn't hear the dainty steps of someone creeping behind. "Blake," a soft voice whispered, and my bloodthirsty delusion shattered. I turned to see bloodshot eyes staring at me, mascara round down her pale, freckled cheeks. A lump formed in my throat, and I almost looked away, but something forced me to commit my work to memory. Her neck was still a deep purple. You could make out every little indent where my hands had been. The thing that stung me to the core. She didn't look angry. There was no malice or fury on her face. She just looked sad. Guilt washed over me, perhaps for the first time in my life. The cutter fell from my hand and clattered to the ground. I collapsed to my knees, tears starting to swell. Aoife looked down on me, her face shifting with betrayal and pity. I took her hands, her deliciously soft hands, and wept into them. So stood frozen for the moment, then quickly pulled back. I looked up at her, her mournful eyes like shining emeralds. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, my beloved, my treasured muse," I cried out. She was silent at my grief. I tried to hold her, to gain any sort of comfort, but she recoiled away from my touch. Behind her, the tender lurked. Horns had sprouted from her head, curled and rimmed like a mountain goat. She gently touched Aoife's shoulder, who shuddered at first, but then calmed herself. She leaned into my beloved's ear and whispered poison into them. Aoife took a deep breath, her bruised neck shifting as she swallowed her fright. You can't even name one thing you loved about me, can you?" she whispered. I scoffed at the accusation. The she-demon that tormented me had to try harder than that. "Of course. Your beauty outshines even the sparkle of the sun. Your hair is like the fires of the phoenix," I waxed, only to be shoved away from her. "I'm talking about me. What I liked. who I was, my dreams. I wanted to dance, and you took that away from me, she said, her voice chiller than a newborn frost. I tried to defend myself, to explain it all, but I never got a chance. She lunged at me in surprising strength in her grip. The heartbreaking betrayal in her emeralds had been replaced by fiery contempt as she wrapped her tiny hands around my throat. It was an odd sensation, this tiny woman attempting to throttle the life out of me. I could feel my airway tighten and closed, the last breath I could muster flying out of my nostril as I gasped. I could feel my face beginning to warm, the blood rushing to a speedy pace. My eyes bulged as they filled with fluid, and I was trapped in her deadly vice. Even she seemed surprised how easy it had been. I thudded my hands on her side, a useless gesture. The world around me began to dwell into a bloody static. My muse's face contouring into righteous rage. The she-demon was beside her, gently encouraging her. The raven-haired demon regarded me with contempt and spoke in her final insult to me. I've been looking for you for a long time. I doubt you remember her name, and I doubt you care what she meant to me. I figured this little preview was the least I could do. Not much comfort from them. Your models. But damned if seeing you lie there doesn't make me feel good at least. She spat at me. With that, I sunk into the inky void, my last thoughts still lingering on my beloved Aofi. I didn't awake again. Not there, anyway. I was drifting in an endless void. I felt restless spirits pass me, their anger quenched as they passed on, yet their hatred lingered, stamped into my soul. Eventually, reality snuck back into being. Ironically, I saw a bright light and clawed my way to it. That light gave way to a flower-print room that smelled like ammonia and the elderly. I was tucked into a bed, stale blankets holding me in place. I tried to get up, was stopped by the rattle of cuffs shackling me to the bedpost. To my left was an EKG monitor, mindlessly beeping. I grunted as I rattled my chains, my whole body feeling like I had been run through the blender. I heard an audible gasp from the doorway, and a nurse rushed out to get someone. I expected some doctor to come in and tell me it was going to be all right. Imagine my surprise when a detective walked in. Grim pleasure plastered on his shaven face. He read me my rights and rattled off the list of charges. I sunk deep into the bed, not having the will to defend against the truth. As he left, he turned back, sporting a smug look. I'm glad you woke up. Maybe they'll let me stick the needle in you myself. With that, he walked off. The next few months were a tiresome blur. I sleptwalked through my brief trial. The skirt-wearing ADA left the evidence speak for itself. Supposedly, after I had slaughtered my muse, her words, not mine, I was consumed with the guilt of horrific nature of my crimes and went on a binge that resulted in a car crash. They were pulling me from the wreckage when her body was found, along with my fantastic paintings. It didn't take long for them to put two and two together, and the capture of the South End Ripper was lauded with praise and outrage it hadn't been sooner. I was in a coma for several weeks. Cops, feds, reporters, and who knows who else was in and out just waiting to pounce on me the moment I awoke. After all, my public defender tried to plead insanity, and on appeal tried to argue it once more. That fell on deaf ears, of course, and so I sit on the Green Mile, awaiting my day of execution. That sordid purgatory I found myself in. I remember it still. I would have thought the fond memories of my deeds would comfort me in these final days, but they're tainted by that awful place. Every time I try to recall the warm feeling of blood on my face, I cringe in pain at the memory of my throat being slit, my skin being burned, and my heart aching at the sight of my muse rejecting me. Those memories are worthless, my legacy shattered. She took it all from me, that damn demon. I don't know who she is, but I have an irking feeling that she bore a striking resemblance to that courtroom skirt. ADA Masters. Those hazel eyes bore into me with such hatred, such familiarity. It's only a few days now, and I know I'll see that demon again, mocking me behind the two-way glasses they track me down and stick the needle in. Sometimes she appears in my dreams, counting down the days, laughing at me with the rest of my models. I don't know why I wrote this down, my final confession, I suppose. I wonder when that numbing fluid starts flowing through me, when the arms of Hades come to drag me down below. Will she be waiting for me? That raven-haired whore tending to the strip club of the damned, eagerly awaiting my arrival so she can do it all again. I guess I'll find out soon. Every year, my mother drugs me and my siblings to prevent the end of the world. Sam. I woke up to my brother's face, his eyes half-lidded. Get up. Every year since we were 12, Mom drugged us before the ritual to stop us escaping. Last year, Jasper puked everywhere, barely able to make the long walk up to the hot spring, and it was a lot harder with his hands tied behind his back. This year, we had a plan. Jasper was already dressed, backpack slung over his shoulder. His crown of entangled bone sat crooked on his curls. Ash streaked across his cheeks. I ripped it off his head, and then tore it off mine. Mom must have crowned us while we were asleep. The crown had always felt like an ending. Until I was 12, I thought my crown was beautiful, my sacrifice worth billions of lives. Then I watched the 18-year-olds mercilessly sacrificed. Supposed to be cheering with my parents, hands bound in silk ribbons, I dropped to my knees and puked. The image of them never leaves my mind. Flesh dripping from bone, skeletal screams. Jasper handed me my backpack, and we pulled Maddie from her bed. She was less likely to be chosen. Girls were meant to bear children for the ritual, but she too wore a crown, ash on her cheeks. Jasper had a car waiting, but before we got to it, Mrs. Benson grabbed me from behind, bony arms around my waist. Jasper was violently pulling from the driver's seat. Maddie forced to her knees. Devil children, Mrs. Benson hissed, grabbing us and dragging us up the mountain to join the line of teenagers stumbling toward the hot spring. Children of fire, the adults chanted, my mother forcing my crown atop my head. Beads of red streaked down my face, jagged edging slicing into my flesh. Children of ash, they shoved me into the line. All of us were ignited flame, already polluted, ash wearing the skins of human children, awaiting her eruption. I hit the ground, breath tangled, inches from the hot spring. I had seen kids boiled alive, skin melting, their screams rattling in my skull. I didn't cry out when my brother was lifted by the scruff of his hair and dropped into the water, disappearing in a hiss of steam. Maddie screamed my name, dragged back by strange men. I was supposed to be next. I would be the 50th sacrifice, saving billions from Yellowstone. Somehow I crawled back, choking on the stink of boiling flesh, clawing my way down the mountain. I ran from my fate, abandoning my brothers and sisters who were reduced to steam clinging to my glasses. Sam Gallows, the 50th sacrifice, had escaped. The next morning was quiet. The lights in my hotel were off. No room service. I sat up, made coffee, and burned it. I burned the bed, and then my crown. I was free. Standing in front of the window, a thick layer of gray already covered the ground below. Childish excitement filled me, and I found myself smiling. It was snowing. There's a body snatcher in my school. She took my friend, and I think I'm next. I'll admit, The stereotypes of being popular kids and being the mean kids is sort of, well, true. Take it from me. I know from experience. Because I was a popular kid, part of the popular crowd at school. I got my ticket in by becoming friends with Raina Morton on my first day at New Rose Academy. She was friends with the popular kids, which naturally made me a part of the group because I was her friend. It was fun at first, but then I noticed they weren't exactly the nicest flowers in the garden. They were even nasty to Raina once, making Aunt Flo jokes when she got her period in gym class and got her skirt, which unfortunately had to be white, soaked with blood. She smiled long, but I could see the hurt in her eyes. Despite this, being popular always had advantages, and I liked Candace, Patrick, and Gabriel. They were the nicest of the group. I didn't like having to join in with the bullying, of course, and I felt like they didn't either, but sometimes we had to. Raina was good at acting. She could act really brutal, but she'd always look guilty afterwards. The worst I had ever did was push a younger girl down and spill her lunch all over her clothes. Lucy took her school bag and made me flush her books down the toilet. As a reward, I got an exclusive invite to the special yacht party hosted by her family in LA. I didn't feel like it was worth it. The girl who we targeted the most was the new kid. She was strange, always alone, and always doing odd things like muttering chants to herself and staring at the wall for ages without blinking once. She was too pale with dark circles around her eyes, dark pinkish stain around her face. She had stringy, thin, blonde hair that looked like it was falling out. She looked seriously ill, so I felt even more bad when she was the target. She was in a lot of our classes, and the stunts were the usual. Stealing her things, cursing her, pulling her hair, spilling food all over her. None of it seemed to affect her, though. But I saw a rage in her eyes that scared me. Things got stranger when she started dropping her classes and transferring to all of mine and Raina's. We were in drama when the teacher announced we had a new transfer. I didn't know her name until then, when the teachers announced her as Eliza. What the fuck? This is the third time she's done this. Is she obsessed with us or something? Raina raged. It could just be a coincidence, but it seemed Eliza really did have some kind of obsession. With Raina, at least. She sat down next to her and smiled at her. Something about the smile seemed off. She stared at Raina for the entire lesson and kept following her around subtly. But I noticed. I wonder why she would have any interest in Raina when just the other day she had spilled soup into her hair. It still reeked of the smell. We ignored her and stopped bothering her as much because everyone was so creeped out by her and suddenly wanted to stay out of her way. Then things got even more weird. I was with Patrick and Lucy outside the recess, sitting on the edge of the water fountain while Patrick took pictures of me for his photography class and Lucy was talking about her boyfriend Isaac. He liked to bully Eliza the most, so immediately started shouting nasty names at her when she came outside. But when Raina came out behind her, they were talking, chatting and laughing like friends. It was so odd, seeing as all Raina would do all day was complain about how creepy Eliza was. The sight did not please Isaac and Lucy. They shouted at Raina to stop talking to Eliza and to come over. But for the first time, she ignored them. Even more surprising. I went over to talk to Raina. Raina, what are you doing? Isaac wants you to... That's my car, Eliza suddenly said. It was the first time I'd heard her voice. It sounded just as frail as she looked. The red SUV pulled up on the road beside us. Raina opened the door to get in. Raina, what are you doing? I exclaimed. What does it look like? She's staying over for dinner with me and Mom. We're giving her a ride to our place, Eliza said. I gaped in shock. Eliza got in the car, and Raina followed. I grabbed her wrist. Raina, I don't think this is a good idea. I have a bad feeling about this. She snatched her hand away. Why are you always so fucking clingy? Leave me alone, she snapped, getting into the car. I was too stunned to speak. This was so unlike her. Isaac came over and started cursing at the car, but it drove away fast, splashing some asphalt onto his shirt. The next day I was worried that Raina didn't show up to school. I kept texting her, but she wouldn't reply. Then during history, she walked in late. She didn't take her usual seat next to me, and sat at the back, started staring at the wall for the entire lesson, which creeped me out. After class, I waited for her by her lockers, which is our next usual meeting place, but she didn't show up. I also realized that Eliza hadn't shown up. I don't know why, but I just had a bad feeling. At lunch, Raina sat down at our table as usual, to my relief. Want to explain what that was about yesterday? Isaac snapped sourly as soon as she came over. Lucas, one of his friends, smirked beside him. I thought Lucy was enough for you to have your attention on, bro. No need to get feisty. No, it's not like that, Isaac gritted his teeth. I just don't want any of us to be seen around people like Eliza. Do you realize how embarrassing that is? It's ruining our reputation. She's my friend, Raina said. The whole table burst into laughter. Go to her then. Go crawling to your fucking friend, Isaac yelled. She should just die. Why do we need creeps like her to exist? Lucy snarled. Raina gave a grin, a creepy one, that sent shivers down my spine. Then I realized it somehow seemed off in a way, that it was familiar, like the way Eliza would smile. Check the janitor's closet, then, she said in a frail whisper before walking off. Creep, Lucas laughed as they went back to their previous conversation. What's wrong with her? Something's not right, Candace said, concerned. You're telling me. After lunch I had drama. Raina didn't show up. After the end of the lesson, I went outside to walk home, and then I noticed there was flashing and sirens. Police. Gabriel rushed over to me, holding something in his hands. Did you hear what happened? Eliza was found hanging in the janitor's closet. Say what? Yeah, Lucy found her, and she found these. He handed me 3 pieces of square paper. The first one was a note. Written on it, a red scrawny writing, were the words, "Thanks for the new body, I don't need this one anymore." My blood felt like it was freezing. The second picture was a photo of Raina and Eliza, with their faces merged together like one face was sucking the other. Then there was another picture, this time a photo of me and Raina, one I don't remember us taking. Like the previous photo, our faces were merged together, like my face was being sucked away by Raina, or should I say, Eliza. And that's the end of tonight's tale by the fire. Thanks for joining me under the moonlight, where the stories come alive and the night listens in. If you felt the magic, howl that love by hitting subscribe, tapping the bell, and sharing the story with your pack. Until next time, stay curious, stay cozy, and keep your ears open. Snaggy Wolf signing off, but the fire never truly goes out.